And the self-narrative that they're building for them says, I can't do the things that I set out to do. But the person who shows up 5 times out of 5 and excels every single time is, I show up every time and I do even better than what they think I should do. Which narrative is better? Is the narrative that you tell yourself I can't do anything, or the narrative that you tell yourself I can do everything and do it better than others? The biggest reason why someone can get paid millions of dollars for an inspirational speech and another person wouldn't get paid a cent to do so, even when they're saying the exact same thing, it's not because of the words that they're saying. It's not necessarily because of who they're saying it to. It's not because of the way that they're saying it. The reason why they get paid so much to say the exact same thing as the next person, but they don't get paid a cent, is because they have built the trust with the audience that what they say and what they do is the same thing. When they do something extraordinary and they say something about that extraordinary event, we give them the validation that they are the right people to say that, okay? If I was to copy and paste David Goggins', spiel, I would not get paid a single cent. Yeah, David Goggins can do it and he can get paid millions most likely. Why? Because he's David Goggins. We can say the exact same thing, but it means nothing, okay? If I started to do the same things as David Goggins, if I started to say the same things as David Goggins, more people would start to listen. Now, that's because when he says something, he's done it. This means everything. Your word is everything. The lies you start to tell yourself, the truths you start to tell yourself, the action that you take is everything. I've been told many a time that I'm doing too much. I say to that, maybe I am, but I don't know yet because I've been able to do it for a while and I haven't bared any consequence for it that I can see. Now, I am also aware that the consequence that I see in the future may be a result of what I'm doing now. That's a trade-off I'm willing to acknowledge and a trade-off that I'm willing to risk, because right now I have very low risk. I can't see any of the work that I'm doing right now being too much for me, rationalizing it in my own mind, because quite a lot of the work is limited and most of the work that I choose to do is only extracurricular, if that makes sense. Because it's quite a slow build with most of these things. Now, again, I may be wrong, and eventually I may have to start saying no to more of these things, or I might have to outsource. Although, I do think that if you can have this high risk tolerance at an early age, which naturally you do have a very high risk tolerance at an early age, if you can get beyond that point where you can have enough financial freedom to not worry about that risk in the future when you do have a higher risk tolerance, maybe you've got a family that depend on you, if you can avoid that by getting enough money to get yourself into financial freedom, no matter what, I will do what I set out to do, even when it's really difficult. So again, I don't think that the maybe 3, 5, 6 sessions that I did miss in a week, accumulatively over these 7 years due to travel, I then made up in the future. I don't think that those 6 to 8 sessions actually would have made me any better. But what those 6 to 8 sessions did do, that I then made up for, reinforced my narrative that I tell myself, which is I can achieve anything that I set out to do. And if I was in a room of 1 million people, then I'm gonna bet on myself that I'm the person who's gonna make it work. When you do say something and you do try and do it, but you don't achieve it, there's an important thing, which is admitting defeat. If I am saying these things to you that I so claim to have knowledge on, then I better be about it. Welcome to this episode of the SCULPTED podcast, guys. It is a solo ep, and it's been a while since we've done one of these. I think 3 weeks, where it's just me sitting down in front of the camera. Now, I'll be honest, I hate preparing for these. I hate filming them. But when I'm finished doing one of these episodes, it's a great feeling. It's a great feeling just sitting down for an hour and just getting everything out. So it's delayed gratification for sure, and it's a little bit of a struggle because I do put a lot of prep into these, because I do feel like if I'm speaking, I better not be caught out. So I try and come as well prepared as possible. But what is today's episode? So as usual, I try and give a bit of a disclaimer. If you do see me going down here or going up there, I am just checking, 1, we're still recording, 2, what I'm actually going over. So today's episode is when you say it, you do it. Now, for me, that's what I call Integrity, it's what I call alignment. That's something that I believe is very important. And I think that's been pretty consistent in a lot of my days, you could say. I do try and keep to my word as much as possible. Don't get me wrong. I have flaws here, but as any human would. All I can say is that I would like to bet that I'm probably just more integral, if that's a word that I could use there, than your average person. What I mean is when I do say something, 9 times out of 10, I'll actually do it. Now, I'm not necessarily even talking about the outrageous things like, oh, I'm going to become the X, Y, or Z. I'm going to do the da da da. Those things are different from what I'm talking about. They can be interrelated, don't get me wrong, but I'm talking about the small things here. Now, let me go back to the big, outrageous ones. That's what I call purposeful delusion, which is purposeful, but it's also delusion, right? That's why I've got the name there. What does purposeful delusion mean? Well, I've made an episode on it before, but purposeful delusion is purposely believing something that may not be true, but it helps you become the thing that you want to become, or helps you become the thing that you think you are. Now, an example of this may be if I want to become a professional footballer, but I am not one yet, I will believe that I am one. Purposefully delusional. Now, that's just an example because that's a bit of purposeful delusion that I used to incorporate in my life. Now, business-wise, I would say I do a very, very similar thing. I would say that I try and act like I am a professional businessman, if that makes, or if that's even a thing. I don't really know if there's a great way to quantify that, but I try and act like that. Now, purposeful delusion, as I said, different to what I'm talking about today. Today I'm talking about sticking to your word, having integrity. When you do say something, you do it. Now, let's talk about these small things. Now, when you say something as simple as, I'm going to wake up at this time, you better do it. Okay? You better do every single small thing that you say you will do. Now, there's many topics that I want to go over, but let me talk about actually the biggest reason why someone can get paid millions of dollars for an inspirational speech, right? This is one that I actually harp on a little bit too much about, if I'm being honest. Like, I've said this a few times, and it's probably because it's like my go-to example. I've actually got another go-to example for, like, I think incentive. I've got a go-to example for incentive, which is Elon Musk. And I talk about if you were to give a single mother a deal saying, yeah, okay, basically, yeah, I'll pay you $1 million to run 100 meters under 15 seconds. And then Elon Musk, the mother would take it in an instant and dedicate like a year to it, but Elon Musk wouldn't bat his eyelids twice. That one I like rip onto a lot. But this one as well is another go-to that I also do rip into a lot. But talking about it, so the biggest reason why someone can get paid millions of dollars for an inspirational speech and another person wouldn't get paid a cent to do so is even when they're saying the exact same thing, right? It's not because of the words that they're saying. It's not necessarily because of who they're saying it to. It's not because of the way that they're saying it, okay? The reason why they get paid so much to say the exact same thing as the next person, but they don't get paid a cent, is because they have built the trust with the audience that what they say and what they do is the same thing, okay? When they do something extraordinary and they say something about that extraordinary event, we give them the validation that they are the right people to say that, okay? If I was to copy and paste David Goggins', I don't know, spiel. I don't really, I've said a few times, I don't really watch David Goggins too much, but if I was to do so, I would not get paid a single cent. Yeah, David Goggins can do it, and he can get paid millions most likely. Why? Because he's David Goggins. We can say the exact same thing, but it means nothing, okay? If I started to do the same things as David Goggins, if I started to say the same things as David Goggins, more people would start to listen. Now, that's because when he says something, he's done it. This means everything. Your word is everything. The lies you start to tell yourself, the truths you start to tell yourself, the action that you take is everything. Now, going into that a little bit more, our word, okay? This is truly what dictates the perception of people. Our actions dictate the perceptions of how people see us. When you can start to shift that narrative and create it around you for purposeful reasons. So I can give an example how some things that I do is I will always, whenever I'm speaking with someone, if I say something to them that I will deliver on, I have to make sure that I deliver above and beyond. Okay? Therefore, whenever I'm working with someone, they have the trust that they're going to get a good product from me. Product being whatever service I'm giving them. Or legitimate product, okay? This is an important part for me because if someone is ever thinking that they need something and they're trying to look for someone and they think, oh, wait, Nick always does a really good job for me when I think about him. And he always over-delivers and he's always done really well. Maybe I'll speak to him. This is the type of thing that I really look for. This is the type of thing that I purposefully try and over-deliver on because I know that my word is everything and it's my reputation as well. Now, I do have a very cool example where I do think that this has paid off in my favor massively. Now, I don't know if I'll be able to share it yet, but in the coming months, you may be able to see where this came out. And it is probably one of the most validating examples that I have where my word has truly paid off for all my hard work, diligence, let's say, because it's not hard work. It's not hard work doing the small things. And the strategy is simple, okay? For me, if I was to look at someone who I wanted to be, whether it's an athlete or a business person, the one thing that they built for themselves, okay, is at any level of success, the one thing that they built for themselves was their own narrative, okay? They didn't build their accomplishment first. They didn't build the facade first. They didn't build any of that. The thing that they built first was their narrative. It would have developed upon the way. It would have. But over time, they would have built their self-narrative, which is talking about, okay, let's imagine that I'm this athlete. I'm 12 years old and I've got training in the morning at 4 a.m. and I know that I've got to get to training. Mum's taking me tomorrow morning to training. What am I going to do? Am I going to wake up at 4 a.m.? Yeah, I'm going to wake up at 4 a.m. tomorrow because I know that I've got training and I've got to get there. Okay? Do I wake up at 4 a.m.? No, I don't. I wake up at 5 a.m. I miss training and I don't go. Soon enough, this becomes a pattern. Now, it may not be every training session, but it comes frequently or infrequently, which is still worse than, well, I guess it's not really much better. For me, the standard that I have would be make every single training session and make it the best you can. Because the difference in narratives there is, okay, I'm someone who is maybe dedicated 4 out of 5 times, okay? Maybe dedicated 4 out of 5 times. Or am I dedicated 5 out of 5 times every time I'm there? Now, it could even be someone who's got zero dedication to anything, and the self-narrative that they're building for them says, I can't do the things that I set out to do. But the person who shows up 5 times out of 5 and excels every single time is, I show up every time, and I do even better than what they think I should do. Which narrative is better? Is the narrative that you tell yourself, I can't do anything, or the narrative that you tell yourself, I can do everything and do it better than others, or do it to the best of my ability? I would much prefer to have the narrative that I can do it every single time and excel. I don't know about you, but to me that seems like the better narrative. Now, it's not a difficult thing to believe if you actually do it every single time. If you stay with integrity to your word. That's difficult to do. Although, It starts very small, and that's where it's not too difficult. If you're able to reframe these things to say, okay, let's just start with the small things first, and eventually I can start building up to the bigger things, right? Maybe I have my to-do list every single day, and I tick it off one by one by one. I build up that momentum, and slowly get better and better. Once I get better, on my word, I can maybe start to make it a little bit more difficult. Maybe, okay, from making my bed every morning, I start to clean my shoes on a weekend. Maybe from starting to clean my shoes on a weekend, I now add 20 push-ups before I go to bed. Maybe after doing those 3, I start to meal prep. Maybe after that, I then start to do more and more and more. And you try and find a level where you can continue to grow upon the things that you say without dropping a standard. So that's something that I believe I've had to work at a lot, where the more and more I add, quite often it means that I have to say no to more and more things. Because if I was to say yes to everything, then there's going to be some things that naturally will fall off. So if I do say yes to something, I have to either be okay with the things that I say no to, or be okay with the things that naturally fall off, or I just don't say yes to them, okay? And either result, or either choice, I have to bear the consequences of my results. That's something it's a trade-off I have to be okay with. So that there is quite a difficult, you could say, it's a difficult, you can see the word that I'm trying to use here and not say it, which is balance, because it's just a nice buzzword, but I'm not going to use it. I think that it's a difficult field to play, because the more you say yes, which is arguably in this case a good thing, it means that you say no to more things as well. So you have to be selective with what you say yes to, and very purposeful to what you say no to. Now, I also don't have an issue with failing on the no's, but accepting failure on those no's is very important as well, and not denying it. Taking ownership for those no's is very important. Now, how could you relate that in your life? Now, as I typically do, I give you an example in my life, and maybe you can relate to it in your own life somehow. So, let's look at the SCULPTED app. Let's look at Live Free. Let's look at the newly acquired Sleep Smart. These are 3 big things that I'm working on right now. Okay. I've been told many a time that I'm doing too much. I say to that, maybe I am. But I don't know yet, because I've been able to do it for a while, and I haven't bared any consequence for it that I can see. Now, I am also aware that the consequence that I see in the future may be a result of what I'm doing now. That's a trade-off I'm willing to acknowledge, and a trade-off that I'm willing to risk, because right now I have very low risk. I can't see any of the work that I'm doing right now being too much for me, rationalizing it in my own mind, because quite a lot of the work is limited, and most of the work that I choose to do is only extracurricular, if that makes sense. Because it's quite a slow build with most of these things. Now, again, I may be wrong, and eventually I may have to start saying no to more of these things, or I might have to outsource. Although, I do think that if you can have this high risk tolerance at an early age, which naturally you do have a very high risk tolerance at an early age, if you can get beyond that point where you can have enough financial freedom to not worry about that risk in the future when you do have a high risk tolerance, maybe you've got a family that depend on you, if you can avoid that by getting enough money to get yourself into financial freedom, or a time freedom at the very least, then you won't ever have to worry about doing too much, let's say. So if I can kind of break that gap, which people do, people can get very wealthy in their 20s and then continue to do as much things as they want for the rest of their life, because they don't have to worry about that capital risk, because they don't have it anymore because of financial reasons or time reasons. If I can beat that curve, where most people get caught in that curve, a lot of people my age will waste this time, and they'll get stuck where there's no risk, and they will waste all of that potential risk capital that they then accumulate over time with their age. if I can skip that risk and get up when I'm younger, then I'll have no risk for the rest of my life. Whereas the people who live in a very non-risky kind of way right now, maybe it's they just enjoy life, maybe they're just studying at university, not that that's a bad thing, but you can also understand from my perspective, I hope that you can see that if I skip that risk, then I won't ever have to worry about many risky things in the future. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm doing it wrong. I don't know. But, hear me out, I would rather do it wrong than do it right now, because I will know how to make it better in the future. Now, you could argue maybe I missed that jump and maybe I then go back into the curve that I so dread. Okay, at least I'm in a better position to get out of that curve than the next person is because they never tried to do it. Maybe they did, but in this case, we're assuming that they didn't. And I would still say that I'm in a better position than they are to actually get out of that curve. Now, again, maybe wrong, but that's just some thoughts on my end. Okay, so some points. Keeping your promises to yourself builds a self-respect that I was talking about. It builds that self-narrative that you tell yourself, right? If it is, I need to wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning, it may be a little bit difficult to do so. But if you start to do it, so many other things that you then previously found hard to do become easy. A good example of this would be fasting, I think. There was a recent episode that I listened to from a podcast talking about fasting, which really reiterated my stance on fasting. And I think that that was quite true that, yeah, eating is something that is natural, it's an instinct, desire, and if you can kind of delay it for a while, willingly, you are building a mental strength to say no to things or to resist things. And if you say that you're going to do it, then yeah, do it. And the more you say you're going to do something and actually do it, the more integrity you have with what you say. Now, let's not misconstrue this to be those outrageous ones, because what happens with those outrageous ones is that you miss so many stepping stones in between. So what I mean by that is if I was to say that I want to become the next Elon Musk, what are the actionable steps that I need to take to get to the next Elon Musk? Well, it may be waking up at 4 a.m. It may be skipping times with my friends. It may be not going on social media. Those are the actionable tasks that you must deliver on, because that will get you to your objective goal. Whereas saying that I want to become Elon Musk isn't an objective goal. It's actually quite subjective on how you're going to get there, which is where the real challenge is, okay? The real challenge is in the small, mundane tasks, I believe, because what is getting to where Elon Musk is? How do you get there? Even that, me saying that there are small, objective things, again, it's very subjective. So doing that, in reality, the only way that you can start to at least try and get there is by having a much more closer alignment to what you say and what you do. Okay? Again, this is all just me and my experiences. I do believe that this is, no matter what I say here, talking about integrity of word, I think that it's a net positive. I don't think that you can dispute or give a counter argument to say, no, when you say something, you shouldn't do it, and that's going to help you. I don't see that in any world where that would make sense. If you've got an argument for that piece, then, let me know. We can have a chat about it. But I do struggle to believe that there is a valid reason for someone to say, okay, every day you should, before you go to bed, say that you're going to wake up at 4 a.m., wake up at 6 a.m. just because it's nice, and that's going to make you a bad person. I struggle to see how that's going to be a net positive. I do believe that there is only a net positive by keeping integrity with your words. Again, if you disagree, let me know. Leave it in the comment section. Send me a message on Instagram. If you've got my number, then you probably deserve to send me a message if you disagree with me. So, yeah, I'll be more than happy to speak with you. Okay. let's kind of reiterate the point about starting small. I didn't really expand on this part, and the reason why I believe you should start small. If I was to start waking up at 4 a.m. every morning, in the hypothetical situation, I actually do wake up at 4 a.m. every morning, and that's not a flex. That's because I start work at 5, so I actually have to wake up at 4 a.m. Not have to, but I choose to wake up at 4 a.m. And if I started to say this, and it was a difficult thing for me to do, maybe I shouldn't start there if it's too difficult. Maybe I should start with, okay, a few little habits that get me going. Soon enough, I'll start to realize that 4 a.m. is not as daunting as before, because I started to do little things previously that got me closer to waking up at 4 a.m. And when I started to wake up at 4 a.m., maybe I felt like I could exercise more. Previously, I wasn't exercising, but now that I woke up at 4 a.m., that was kind of tough. You know what? I already did something tough today. How about I go do something else that's tough? This is what people talk about with ice baths. Now, I do use the ice bath a fair bit. I used to have one outside here, but now that I live in between houses and do quite a lot of traveling, I only get to use the ice bath at the gym that I go to. So 3 times a week. Yeah, it's all right. Does the job. But people talk about ice baths and how if you start your day off doing something that you hate, then the rest of the day, everything just becomes easier. Now, I do have that philosophy with exercise. I always try and make sure that I exercise as soon as I wake up. For example, I woke up this morning and tried to get into the gym, realized that I don't know where my little key is for the gym. Tried to get in, but I didn't make an excuse and I did not go to the gym. Well, I didn't actually go to the gym. I went for a run, which was a part of my plan. I was going to go for a run on the treadmill because it was raining outside. But instead, I just did my run outside and I didn't make any excuses for it. I did what was hard, but I'm glad that I did what was hard. So that then makes it easier for me to do more hard things throughout the day. Start small, progressively overload, which is a gym term, I believe, but it does have a lot of truth here. Start to slowly, progressively overload, even on a mental capacity, because, yeah, the more you start to say something and do it, the more things you can start to do and say and actually truly be able to do it. And that's where you can really build up your self-narrative. Now, some other things that I have. So, consistency. In the 6 or 7 years, I honestly don't know, of football that I played, I did not miss one training session. What I mean by that is I only ever had 1 day a week where I would rest for that whole period of time. I don't even think that was difficult for me to do. The only time where that was difficult for me to do was logistics-wise. Like if I was traveling, for example. But guess what? If I missed a day and maybe I had 2 rest days in that week, then the next week I wouldn't have a rest day and I'd make up for it. And that wouldn't be me saying I don't want to go. It would be me saying I literally can't get there. I have to make up for it next week. And I don't think that helped me football-wise in any specific way. But what it did help me was with my narrative. No matter what, I will do what I set out to do, even when it's really difficult. So again, I don't think that the maybe 3, 5, 6 sessions that I did miss in a week, accumulatively over these 7 years due to travel, I then made up in the future. I don't think that those 6 to 8 sessions actually would have made me any better. Okay? But what those 6 to 8 sessions did do that I then made up for reinforced my narrative that I tell myself, which is I can achieve anything that I set out to do. And if I was in a room of 1 million people, then I'm gonna bet on myself that I'm the person who's gonna make it work, because this is the narrative that I tell myself, and I actually prove it to myself through the actions that I take. Now, that is the self-trust that I have in myself. But that self-trust is only built up over time. You can have a lot of purposeful delusion there for sure. That's very valid. But a part of purposeful delusion is also taking action, because without action, it's really nothing. It is really nothing. So it starts with taking action. That's a massive, massive step. Now, when I say when I say I'm going to do something, I better do it, because there is no way I can continue to do the hard things in my life if I continue to lie to myself. So every single day, I make sure to do the small daily tasks. Now, they have to be complete, whether it's my journaling, whether it's my push-ups before bed. I hate doing push-ups before bed, and it doesn't even help me. But I do it because I hate to do it. And I'll be nice, warm in bed, because it's winter at the moment, and then I'll realize I haven't done my push-ups before bed. And I have to get out of my warm, comfy bed, and I have to do 30, 40 push-ups. And I'm like, this is the worst thing ever. But it's not important for what it gives me, strength-wise. It's important for what it gives me, narrative-wise. Because when I do skip that, I'm just lying to myself. Okay, if I skip training on any day, then how can I trust myself to do something even harder than just training? Imagine I'm in a worse environment where I must do something, or else. I just have to do it. But maybe that day I wasn't feeling motivated. Maybe that day I wasn't feeling up for the challenge. What type of person would I be? I wouldn't be able to do anything. I would be caught out there and then. But if I was someone who had integrity with my word, these inconvenient challenges would not pose me. And actually, it would be very easy for me to do something that I've probably been doing the whole time anyways. And someone who does that realizes that the environment and things around them quite often don't have influence with what they do. Now, that's a bit of a difficult thing to get your head around, but I want to reiterate the point where when you do say something and you do try and do it, but you don't achieve it, there's an important thing, which is admitting defeat. I talk about admitting defeat in my family a bit, and I say, yep, I'll admit defeat here. They don't like me using it because it sounds like there's a winner and loser in this situation, and I use it exactly because there is a winner and loser in a conversation. If they are right and I am wrong, then I'm defeated. So what? Now I know how to not be defeated. Okay. If I am the winner in this case, then yeah, I defeated them with my points. Maybe it was a logical inconsistency. Maybe it was just a dilemma. Whatever it was, admitting defeat is not a bad thing, because guess what? Your narrative still stays consistent. If you lie to yourself and have to convince yourself that you still did the thing without doing it, then that is delusion. Now, maybe you can argue that, okay, have a bit of purposeful delusion in there if you were really close to doing something but didn't achieve it. Okay, sprinkle a bit of purposeful delusion in there. But if you do something and you don't achieve what you set out to do, admit defeat, but just try to be better next time. It's not an easy thing to do, to admit defeat sometimes, but it is an important step of keeping integrity to your word, even when failing, because admitting that you were wrong and that you can do better will help you next time. Now, don't make it a pattern. You want to try and over-deliver most times rather than under-deliver, but when you do this, make sure you are very aware of what you say, what you do, and how you act around that. Now, that's this episode wasn't going to be too long, guys. It's kind of just a sit down like I've done previously and just talking about some thoughts that I have. Now, I do believe everything that I say here, it comes through a lot of life experiences that I've had. Now, if you're listening to me for the first time, you're thinking, he's 19 years old, what life experience does he have? Very true. What life experience do I have? I guess not much. Who am I to say all this? No one. But what I do think you can take away from me saying this is that if I am saying these things to you that I so claim to have knowledge on, then I better be about it. Now, all I can say is continue to watch what I do, right? If I am truly a fraud, then the things that I say right now to you are a lie. But from this podcast, you can probably see that I try and keep as consistent as possible to my word and have as much integrity as possible to the things that I say. So let's see if my actions align with my words. Now, I don't think I've made anything too outrageous here, so I've covered my tracks well. But if there is anything that I have claimed to say or to be or to do, take me up on it. I can give you a brilliant example onto me with Tim Grover. I've said it quite a few times, and I've even changed my perspective a little bit on it, but I still will keep true to my word here. I still do want to get Tim Grover onto this podcast. Now, it's probably not as with as much ambition as I previously had, just athlete-wise, because I did want to always get Tim Grover as a coach of mine. I did always want that. So now that I'm not playing football professionally or at the level that I was previously, looking for Tim Grover is not as on the cards as it was, but to have a conversation with him, to speak with him, is still something very much that I want to go after. And if you look at the first reasons why we started this podcast, was to eventually look at doing something with Tim Grover, whether it was just an episode, a series, something like that. That was always a big dream of mine. Actually, I just had a flashback to when I started the SCULPTED app. Some of my first few pitch decks were literally just for Tim Grover. I was trying to get him on as a 50-50 business partner. I really didn't know anything about business, and that's not to say that I know much about business now, but even just thinking about getting Tim Grover on as a 50-50 business partner was kind of crazy. I think I did know that was kind of crazy, but I was thinking, okay, on the odd chance, if I can show them I can provide enough value here and show that it's probably interrelated to what he's doing anyways, maybe he might come on as 50-50, but that was, a while ago. It's not even a year ago, to be fair, but a lot can change in that year, and Tim Grover, if you are listening, if you see that I'm providing enough value now, if you do see or have any interest here, I may be around your end soon. So, definitely could link up. But anyways, guys, I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Maybe different from the types of episodes you've seen in the most recent weeks. It's been a bit of a slower few weeks just because of life being very hectic at the moment. I have been all over the shop in the UK, in Sydney. I've been recovering from my lack of work in terms of my job. Outside of the business side, which is only a new job, I've only been working there for 2 weeks. But I also had been on holidays straight after my first 2 weeks. For 2 weeks. So I do have to cover my tracks a little bit. Now I've been working there for, a month in total. Yeah, a month in total. I hope you enjoyed this one. And more to come of this. I do like doing these episodes, as I said. Like, in the moment, it sucks. Like, this is the most boring thing ever. Editing it, boring. Filming it, boring. Doing all of this research, boring. But the satisfaction you get from after doing one of these, as I said, is really good. So, back to the point. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you do like, subscribe. Follow me on Instagram at NICKRATOCHVIL. And you can also follow my second page, which is the same at but with an underscore. Make sure you do subscribe to the SCULPTED podcast. Make sure you also subscribe to the Clips channel. If you don't follow us on whatever subscription software you use for podcasting, make sure you follow us on there. We're on Apple Music, Spotify, anything that you use, we're on. So make sure you follow us there. Leave a review if you liked this episode, and leave a review if you like our podcast. Production level is going up. Liam now has a better camera than I. So, yeah. Although I do have a better background than him. He doesn't have lights like me, so. And actually, to be fair, I'm also doing the edit. But yeah, make sure you do like, subscribe, do all that cool stuff. Because, the better the podcast gets, the better these episodes will get. Now, I don't ever intend to stop these types of episodes. I want to continue doing them. But I do really, really like the guest episodes as well, because they are sick. And I really fully intend doing many more of those in the future. So, appreciate you listening to this one. And we'll catch you in the next episode, guys. Catch you later.